In late December of 1966, a meter reader discovers a 14-inch pile of ashes on the floor of a basement where he is checking a customer's gas meter. He notices that there are no burn marks around the ashes, like the ashes have just been placed there. Confused, he looks up and sees a hole burned through the wood floorboards above. The hole looks like the source of where the ashes came from. He then heads upstairs to investigate, and the nightmare he finds is beyond comprehension. A scene that makes absolutely no logical sense. A scene that has baffled authorities and scientists for decades. Today we're going to go over the long debated and controversial subject of spontaneous human combustion. We are going to go over the first cases from hundreds of years ago to some more modern cases and their similarities. Then we are going to dig up some scientific and alternative theories and attempt to uncover the truth of what really happened. And welcome to Dredge a Reality, where we talk about crazy facts, mysteries, and scary stories we've dredged from reality. Please subscribe to our channel, hit the bell notification, and the like button so you don't miss any content we've dredged up for you. Now let's get to digging.
This story is based on true events. Some people's names have been changed to protect their identities. Viewer discretion is advised.
Spontaneous human combustion, also known as SHC, is the theory that a person catches fire and is almost completely consumed without any apparent external source of ignition. Victims are often found reduced to ash with extremities such as hands or feet, sometimes remaining intact, while nearby furniture and surroundings show minimal fire damage despite the intensity of the burning. The torso is usually the most severely burned, while some of the other body parts remain untouched. But most reported cases of SHC involve burns concentrated in the upper body, usually in the torso, the head, or the arms, while the lower extremities, usually from the knee down, often remain relatively intact. Sometimes the lower legs and feet are completely untouched. This pattern has been observed in several historical cases and has contributed to the mystery surrounding SHC. Usually a strange, greasy, oily residue is left behind in alleged cases. It's one of the most puzzling and common reported details. The residue is often found on the walls, furniture, and nearby objects, sometimes coating the entire room where the combustion occurred. There are also reports of a foul odor coming from the residue. So basically, in a nutshell, the theory is you were just hanging out and all of a sudden your torso area catches on fire and the fire started inside of your torso for no apparent reason. Burning is so hot, it burns your entire upper body to ashes, sometimes leaving your hands and or feet untouched, somehow leaving nearby objects with no to very little damage, and a greasy, stinky residue is left behind. Some cases report that the body burns so completely that the bones turn to ash, which typically requires temperatures of between 2,000 to 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit, far hotter than most house fires. There have been over 200 reports of spontaneous human combustion in the last 300 years. Of the hundreds of accounts on record, they all usually follow somewhat of the same pattern. They were usually alcoholics and usually elderly females, but not always. This is a mystery that has been debated and baffled people for centuries. Some people believe it is caused by supernatural, paranormal, or unexplained biological processes, believing things like psychic or emotional energy, poltergeist or ghost, or some sort of divine punishment is involved. Some people even believing in possible extraterrestrial involvement. But modern scientists and forensic experts do not believe in spontaneous human combustion as an unexplained or supernatural phenomenon. They believe there is a scientific explanation for it, and they have their theories as well. Join me as we delve into some unsettling cases of spontaneous human combustion that really stood out. We'll start out with some of the first cases from hundreds of years ago and move on to some more modern cases. Then we'll dig a little deeper into the scientific and alternative theories of this phenomenon to attempt to uncover the truth of what really happened. As I've said before, there are more than 200 reported cases of spontaneous human combustion in the last 300 years. But spontaneous human combustion hasn't just been reported the last 300 years, it's been reported far longer. Let's go over some of the first documented cases in history. In order to do that, we have to travel all the way back to 15th century Italy, specifically the 1470s. It is reported in the 1470s that there was a knight named Polonus Vorstius. Please forgive me if I butchered that. When Polonus wasn't in battle, he liked alcohol and singing. He reportedly drank wine like crazy and loved singing at pubs all across Italy. This guy liked to party when he wasn't fighting. According to Polonus's parents, their son drank 2 ladles of strong wine one night. As he got drunk, he started vomiting fire out of nowhere, with his torso all of a sudden catching on fire. This is widely claimed as being the first documented case of spontaneous human combustion ever. But this information about Polonus largely originates from later accounts, notably by the Danish doctor and mathematician Thomas Bertholin in his 1641 book that I'm going to put on the screen because I can't pronounce. This book is a significant work in the history of anatomy and medicine. It is a collection of anatomical observations and medical case studies. Bertholin documented a wide range of unusual anatomical findings, diseases, and medical phenomena. Some of the cases he included were based on anecdotal accounts and historical records. This is where cases such as the one of Polonus were found. It is important to remember that medical documentation in the 17th century was far different than it is today, and that some of the records he used would be considered anecdotal by modern standards. Bertholin stated that he obtained this information from generations of Polonus's family. This means that the case was already passed down through time before he even wrote it down. This leaves a lot of room for misunderstanding and exaggeration. Another really famous and well-documented old case of spontaneous human combustion is the case of Countess Cornelia Bandi, who was a 66-year-old noblewoman from Italy in 1731. As a noblewoman and a high-ranking member of society, Countess Bandi lived in relative wealth and comfort. She was described as a religious woman, engaging in regular prayers and maintaining a disciplined lifestyle. Some historical accounts suggest that she had health issues and she was known to drink alcohol often, though the accuracy of this claim is debated. On the night of March 3rd, 1731, Countess Bandi sat down to eat dinner as usual. By the time she was finished, she reportedly felt slightly unwell, but did not express serious concern. She was still in good spirits despite her discomfort. She then wishes her maid well and makes her way to her chambers to get ready for bed. Before going to bed, she engages in a prayer, a regular part of her evening routine. She then went to sleep in her chambers alone. The next morning, on March 4th, 1731, the Countess's maid enters her room to check on her to see if she's getting up and ready for the day. As soon as she enters the room, she is met with a horrific and bizarre sight. Countess Bandi's body was almost entirely reduced to ash. Only her lower legs, part of her head, and a few fingers remained intact. The bed, furniture, and most of the room showed little to no fire damage. There was also a greasy yellowish residue coating the walls and the ceiling, and a thick, foul-smelling smoke was still present in the air. Servants and other household members rushed to the scene, but what they found didn't make any sense. The burn pattern was also highly unusual. Objects close to the body, such as the bed and linens, were not significantly burned. A nearby oil lamp and candles remained intact, ruling out obvious external ignition sources. Also, the floor beneath her body was only slightly scorched, but not burned through. The local authorities were called in to examine the scene. Given the extent of the burning, it was determined that the fire must have burned for several hours. No signs of external foul play or an attack were found. It's very strange how someone can burn so intensely without catching their surroundings on fire, and the fact that it's basically just their center mass and it's so hot that it reduces them to ashes. Let's explore some of the more modern cases of spontaneous human combustion so we can compare, and then dig a little deeper on some of the theories and see if we can uncover the truth of what really happened. On July 1st, 1951, at 1200 Cherry Street in St. Petersburg, Florida, a 67-year-old woman named Mary Reeser was at her apartment visiting with her son Richard and a neighbor. She had slipped into one of her nightgowns, bedroom slippers, and a robe just before they came over. She then opened up a window to let some fresh air in, and sat down in her overstuffed easy chair, just relaxing and enjoying cigarettes before bed. Mary was originally from Columbia, Pennsylvania, and had just moved to Florida to be close to her only son Richard because she had just become a widow. Her son Richard and the neighbor visited her for a minute. They eventually had to leave, so she kissed her son goodbye and told them to have a good night. They went on with their night, glancing back at Mary in her robe and easy chair as they walked out. The next morning, Mary's landlady, Pansy Carpenter, attempted to deliver Mary a telegram, but Mary wasn't answering the door. When Pansy touched the doorknob, it was unusually hot, and she could feel heat coming from her apartment. Due to this, and Mary not answering the door, she contacted the authorities. Firefighters and police arrived a short time later and made their way inside, and what they found was not what anyone expected, something that didn't make sense. Even though Mary's windows were open, it was unusually warm in her apartment. There was a light soot and smoke in the room, which indicated a fire source at some point. They looked around and noticed in the corner of the room there was a dark charring and what looked like ashes. They made their way to the area and found the burnt remains of a chair and a lamp. They also found an electric clock with a melted plug that had stopped at 4:20 a.m. Upon closer examination, they discovered part of Mary's backbone, her skull, with reports saying it was shrunken the size of a cup, and they found her left leg below the knee, still wearing a black silk slipper. They also noticed a greasy yellowish film found on the walls and the surfaces of her apartment. The part that's crazy is, other than the charred remains of Mary in the corner and the items directly nearby burnt, nothing else in the apartment was disturbed. The fire was hot enough to reduce Mary to ashes, but didn't burn the apartment down. Investigators struggled to explain how her body could be reduced to ashes at temperatures of over 2,500 degrees Fahrenheit, which again is far hotter than a normal house fire, but the apartment didn't burn down, and the room showed minimal fire damage, with newspapers even being nearby left unburned. Authorities ultimately ruled her death as an accidental fire caused by a cigarette. They speculated that once unconscious, the fire burned her body slowly and intensely due to the presence of body fat and the surrounding fabric, leading to her total cremation. But how does that explain the apartment and surrounding areas not being burned? On the night of December 4th, 1966, a 92-year-old man named Dr. John Bentley was wrapping up visiting with one of his friends around 9 p.m. The friend told him bye and went on with their night. After that, it is assumed that Dr. Bentley went inside to get ready for bed. The next morning, on December 5th, 1966, a meter reader named Don Gosnell entered the home of Dr. Bentley located in Coudersport, Pennsylvania. Don was a meter reader for the local gas company and had permission from Dr. Bentley to enter the home. Don's job was mostly to ride around and check people's gas meters to see how much gas they had used that month. As he walks into the home, he makes his way inside and closes the door and heads to the basement where the meter is located. He notices a slight haziness and smoke as he's walking through the home. As soon as he enters the basement, he notices a strange smell. He actually said it smelled somewhat sweet, like someone starting up a new oil-burning central heating system. Confused by the smell, he continues on his walk towards the meter. Moving closer to the meter, he notices something on the ground that looks like a pile of ashes. As he gets closer, he notices it actually is a neat pile of ashes around 14 inches high. Don was very confused by this. What confused him even more is the floor underneath the ashes had no burn marks on it, so it was like someone just placed the ashes there. He looks up and sees a hole in the floorboards above. Realizing something was horribly wrong, Don rushes upstairs to investigate. He makes his way to the bedroom, and the smoke got thicker as he entered the room. The smell was also intensified. He sees nothing in the bedroom and makes his way to the bathroom that is connected to the bedroom. And what he finds is horrifying and not what he expected to see that day, much less ever. He sees part of a human body almost completely reduced to ashes. The only thing left was the person's lower right leg, and the foot still had a slipper on it. Understandably horrified, he ran out of the house and alerted the authorities. When authorities arrived and they started investigating, they determined the remains were that of Dr. John Bentley. He was reduced to ashes, and there was a hole burned in the floorboards below him that was about 2.5 feet wide. But authorities were baffled. Not only was this man completely reduced to ashes, except for his lower right leg with his foot still in a slipper, but the house wasn't completely burned to the ground. The rest of the house showed minimal fire damage. Papers and furniture nearby were untouched. A partially melted walker was found near the remains, suggesting Dr. Bentley had been using it before the fire started. The rubber tips on it were still intact, and a nearby bathtub was barely damaged. That hole in the floor remains one of the most bizarre details of this case. Normally fires spread, but in this case, the fire seemed to focus entirely on Dr. Bentley's body, burning intensely enough to burn a hole through the floor, yet leaving most of the house intact. Despite these crazy circumstances, the coroner, Dr. W.J. Smith, did not officially classify Dr. Bentley's death as spontaneous human combustion. The coroner's theory was Dr. Bentley was known to smoke a pipe and had difficulty walking due to his age. It was speculated that he possibly dropped a match or hot embers from his pipe onto his robe, igniting his clothing. Being physically weak and possibly unaware of the fire at first, he may have collapsed and burned to death. While local authorities and fire investigators did not officially call it spontaneous human combustion, the bizarre nature of the fire and how it intensely focused on Dr. Bentley's body while barely affecting the surrounding areas led many paranormal researchers to suspect spontaneous human combustion. Some fire experts remain skeptical, pointing out that the open flames, like a dropped match, could cause similar effects under the right conditions. Spontaneous human combustion believers argue that the fire hot enough to incinerate a human body should have caused more damage to the home, which it did not. Officially, Dr. Bentley's death was ruled an accidental fire, likely caused by his pipe or matches. Unofficially, his case remains one of the most compelling examples of possible spontaneous human combustion due to the extreme burning of his body, the isolated nature of the fire, and the lack of a clear external ignition source. Even today, his case is one of the most famous and mysterious spontaneous human combustion incidents ever recorded. Was it an accident, or was there something deeper at play? On the morning of December 22nd, 2010, in Galloway, Ireland at approximately 3 a.m., a man named Tom Mannon wakes up to the sound of a fire alarm. But it's not coming from his home, it's coming from outside. He gets out of bed and makes his way over to the window. He opens up the curtain and peeks outside. To his horror, he sees smoke billowing out of his neighbor's home across the street. He makes his way to the phone and calls the fire department. Firefighters showed up to the house very quickly. When they arrived, the first thing they noticed was there were no visible flames coming from the house, only smoke. They then proceeded to enter the home to see if someone needed to be rescued. When they got to the front door, it was locked. They had to force their way inside of the home. They started quickly making their way through all of the rooms in a smoke-filled house. The first areas they checked had no one, but that would all change as soon as they made their way to the living room. When firefighters walked into the living room, the first thing they noticed was a fireplace with what looked like ashes piled in front of it. As they moved closer, they realized the reality of what they were looking at, and it wasn't ashes from the fireplace. What they were looking at were leftover remains of a person almost completely burned to ashes, but with their lower parts of their legs still remaining. The fireplace still burning, but no evidence of that being the source of the fire that burned them. No furniture, walls, or most of the surrounding room were damaged by the fire. The only damage was the floor below them and the ceiling above them, which were scorched. Firefighters checked for potential sources of ignition, but found no evidence of accelerants, electrical faults, or flammable materials that could have caused the fire. There were no signs of foul play, forced entry, or a struggle. The pattern of burning was highly unusual because in typical house fires, flames spread outwards, consuming furniture and other objects. But in this case, only the body, the floor beneath, and the ceiling above had been burned. Pathologists examined the remains, and the victim was identified as 76-year-old Michael Faherty. He was a pensioner in the local area, and he lived alone at the time of the incident. When the pathologist was examining Michael, they couldn't find any external ignition source. Fire investigators also ruled out a conventional fire as nothing else in the room was burned. The case was then handed over to West Galloway coroner Dr. Ciaran McAulin for further investigation. On December 22, 2011, after months of investigation, Dr. McAulin ruled that Michael Faherty had died from spontaneous human combustion. He concluded that the fire began and ended in Faherty's body, and no other reasonable explanation could be found. The ruling was highly controversial, as many fire experts believe spontaneous human combustion is not scientifically proven. Some proposed alternative explanations, however, due to the lack of any clear cause, the verdict remained, making Faherty's case one of the rarest official recorded cases of SHC, the first in Irish history. Michael Faherty's case still remains one of the rarest and most mysterious cases of spontaneous human combustion ever recorded. It is often cited in discussions about unexplained fire deaths and the scientific legitimacy of SHC. So those were a couple of the first spontaneous human combustion cases and a few of the modern cases that really stand out. Now we should dig a little deeper, go over some theories, and attempt to dig up the truth of what really happened. Let's start with some of the more scientific theories, and then we will work our way into some of the alternative theories. Then you can decide what makes the most sense to you and let me know in the comments what you think. Our first theory is ketosis and flammable gases. The body naturally produces acetone, a highly flammable substance, when breaking down fat. Conditions like diabetes, alcoholism, and fasting can increase acetone levels. A high concentration of acetone could in theory ignite from a small external spark. Some SHC victims were reported to have been drinking alcohol before their deaths, which could increase acetone production. But acetone alone does not explain why some victims burned completely while their surroundings remained intact. There are also no confirmed cases of a human body igniting due to acetone buildup. The next theory is static electricity or electrical discharge. Some individuals generate high amounts of static electricity due to friction, clothing, or other atmospheric conditions. In theory, an extreme discharge of static electricity could ignite flammable gases or body fat. Cases of static electricity igniting gas leaks or flammable substances have been recorded before. Also, certain rare conditions, like extremely dry environments, can lead to unusually strong static discharges. But the amount of static electricity needed to ignite a human body is far greater than what has been observed. There are also no scientific evidence of static electricity alone causing combustion of human tissue. Another theory is hyperthermia and internal chemical reactions. Some scientists theorize that under extreme conditions like fever and metabolic disorders, internal heat buildup could ignite the body's fat or gases. Certain rare medical conditions could cause a chain reaction leading to localized combustion. some SHC cases involve people who were sick and had unknown medical conditions before burning. The human body also produces heat and flammable compounds, but usually at low levels. Some arguments against this theory are the body has built-in cooling mechanisms, making it unlikely to reach combustion temperatures. Also, no confirmed cases of internal combustion have ever been observed. Our next theory is external ignition sources overlooked. In some SHC cases, a nearby ignition source such as a candle, cigarettes, or fireplace may have started the fire, but investigators failed to find clear evidence. Some theories suggest that fumes from alcohol, medications, or other chemicals in the body could make individuals more flammable. The evidence against this theory is some of the cases have no clear ignition source. Also, certain SHC cases involve rapid burning, which remains difficult to explain. The final and most widely accepted theory is the wick effect, which is when the human body acts like a candle, with clothing as the wick and the body fat as fuel, caused when a small external ignition source, like a cigarette or fireplace embers, ignite clothing. Once the fire reaches the skin, it melts body fat, which is flammable, and slowly burns, sustaining the fire. This process explains why the body can burn for hours while leaving furniture and surrounding areas mostly untouched. Many SHC cases involved elderly, immobile individuals who may have been near an ignition source. Fire experiments using pig carcasses, which have similar fat content to humans, have replicated the wick effect. But some SHC victims allegedly burned too fast for the wick effect to fully explain. Also, a clear ignition source isn't always found in these cases. Now let's explore some non-scientific theories on why spontaneous human combustion happens. Some theories people came up with since science hasn't fully explained some odd aspects of SHC, like why their homes don't completely burn down. Some paranormal researchers believe that SHC could be caused by the influence of demonic spirits. In this view, an unseen force or entity might initiate an internal ignition process targeting a person as part of a curse. Proponents argued that the highly localized nature of the burns and the seeming lack of any external ignition source could be evidence of supernatural intervention. Another supernatural explanation is that SHC represents a form of divine punishment. According to this belief, individuals who have committed severe sins or transgressions might be struck down by a sudden, consuming fire as a form of retribution from a higher power. This concept draws on religious and historical narratives where divine fire is used as a symbol of judgment or purification. There are also theories involving energy beings or interdimensional forces that defy conventional physics. Proponents of these ideas say that entities from other dimensions or energies not yet understood by science might interact with human beings in unpredictable ways. In such encounters, the human body could be subjected to intense energy transfer or overload that results in combustion. Some UFO conspiracy theorists suggest that SHC victims are actually abductees who were exposed to alien technology or experimented on in ways that cause their bodies to combust. According to this theory, the fire is a side effect of energy beams, radiation, or unknown extraterrestrial processes. And finally, one of the more philosophical or metaphysical ideas is that SHC occurs when a person's soul or life force abruptly exits the body in a sudden and forceful manner. This could be due to extreme trauma, spiritual enlightenment, or other unknown cosmic forces. So there you have it, some of the first cases of spontaneous human combustion, and some modern cases, and some scientific and alternative theories on why this phenomenon happens. Some of the similarities in these cases are truly odd, like the house and objects not burning, no provable ignition sources, and usually the leg from the knee down remaining. I suggest looking into more of these cases. There are lots out there, all with the same similarities. So what do you think happened in these cases? Do you think there's a logical explanation for these events, like the widely accepted wick effect? Or do you think it's something more alternative, like the divine or paranormal? Comment below and let me know what you think. If you want to send me a story or just talk, comment below as well, or send me a message at contact@dredgerreality.com. I check all of my messages. If I use a story you share with me, I will give you a shout out in the video. Thanks so much for watching, and please make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any reality we've dredged up for you. I'll see you next time with some more crazy facts, mysteries, and scary stories dredged from reality.